This week's episode of The Grid is sponsored by MPix. Shoot today, upload tonight, we ship tomorrow. Manfrotto, imagine more. On One Software, software that gets you back to shooting. Adorama, more than a camera store. Tiffin, helping create the world's greatest images. Peach Pit Press, publishers of technology books, ebooks, and videos for creative people. Epson, exceed your vision. Expo Imaging, Rogue Flash Benders for speedlight enthusiasts. Nix Software, photography first. And B&H Photo, the professional source.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Grid, sponsored by Kelby Training. My name is RC, and I'm here with Mr. Pete Collins. What's going on, man?
How's it going?
Good.
It's going well.
It's doing
I just
all right, man.
answered the question and asked it. That's great. I'm ready to go, ready to rock.
We're ready to go. We're really, really excited to be with you guys today. Right now, Scott is not here, obviously, right? You see the two of us. And Matt is out teaching. If I'm not mistaken, he is out teaching in Orlando. So keep in mind that this is a show that involves all of you guys. So if you guys are watching, make sure that you're watching on kelbytv.com/on air. And if you want to take part of the conversation, we just had the hashtag kind of show up there. You can go on Twitter and make sure that you put in # The Grid Live and send us your comments, send us your feedback. Make sure that you participate. That's in the chat there. We have a great show. We're going to talk about conflict.
Yep. We're all about conflict. That's how you fight in real life, which is pretty amazing.
Yes, it is. It does. I do very, very well on that. But before we do any of that, we also want to make sure that we acknowledge everybody that's here on the set, starting with Paris, France, on the very, very left corner of the world. Miss Nancy Massey. What's going on, Nancy? How you doing?
Do you like that?
Yes.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good. Not bad. We're ready to get into conflict.
You're so coy.
Can I just do a real quick shout out,
Sure.
guys, real quick?
Absolutely.
I just want to say hi, Dave Clayton. Dave Clayton is our UK NAP evangelist, and he does an amazing job. And I know we get a lot of people over in Europe and UK that are watching, and they usually don't, they don't always get to win prizes and stuff like that. So I just wanted to say really quickly, if you go to his blog, which is napmember.co.uk, you can enter to win from On One Software Perfect Photo Suite 6 with a free upgrade to 7. And this one, because we do a lot of stuff in the US, not a lot for the UK, so this is open to UK people, and I'm sure probably a good portion of Europe, but I'm going to leave that one up to Dave. So hi, Dave. That's it. Thank you.
Nice. Very, very cool.
Great
Thank
job.
you very
there
much.
you go, Dave. That's for you.
Perfect. Now, let's just get a couple of bill payment things out of the way. We have a great book deal from Peach Pit, from Asta, Kansas, by Mr. Vincent Versace. Is now only $26.99. That's a 40% discount off for Kelby TV viewers, and it is for only a limited time. Make sure that you go to peachpit.com/Kelby TV. Enter in the code KelbyTV, and you can get 40% off this book. Now, this book has done very, very well in the charts on Amazon.
Yep. It's done really well.
So if you want to know almost every black and white technique known to man in photography from a very, very well-known photographer, Mr. Versace himself, this is the book that you want to get.
And you can't beat 40% off. That's
No,
great.
you cannot. You cannot.
Speaking of great, how you doing? I'm just glad to have you back. You've been gone for a little while. How was your time?
I know, dude. It was great. It was really, really cool. It was a really, really nice time. I was actually, for the first time in 5 years, I took a vacation, right? Personal confession time, right? When I came to work here, I actually took the job and just kind of went straight down, right? Got married. And 2 days after I got married, I kind of came down here. I didn't really spend any time away. So I never got a honeymoon. I never got any kind of vacation time. Sabine was born 4 years into that. So we're like, all right, let's get away. So Joe McNally had this workshop that he was doing, teaching an advanced flash workshop, and he asked whether or not I'd be a guest instructor for that. So we flew out to St. Lucia, and the way the workshop is worked out, it's actually at a place called Anse-en-Chanet in St. Lucia. However, just directly above Anse-en-Chanet is a resort called Jade Mountain, which is absolutely, positively the most amazing experience that I've ever had of my life.
I'm not jealous at all, and my wife is really disgusted with you, but keep going on.
But it was one of those things where it was kind of like a combination 5-year anniversary / honeymoon / workshop / getting away. But here, I'll show you guys some pictures very, very quickly because I thought it was kind of cool. But this is kind of the way it was, right? So we were out there, and this is us, right, kind of hanging out. So that's McNally at the front. We're being driven over to this location, and it's a really, really nice place. This is what the view looked like when we were driving over to that spot. We're walking over to our room, right? So
that's your door to your room right there,
No,
right?
no, that's not the door yet, dude. But literally, like, this is built on the side of a mountain, which is just phenomenal. You go through these giant walkways, and these are what the walkways look like. So each of these walkways brings you, that's one room. Every walkway brings you to one room.
That's unbelievable.
And the room is exposed. It has a front, it's missing a wall. So you just see straight out. So this is our butler. You get a butler for the week on a phone, which I think is really cool. And we just got into the room. A bottle of champagne hanging out at the room. This is the room. The entire front of the room is missing. It's an infinity pool, and it faces the Caribbean. That's Jen hanging out at the bathroom. Now, this is the one that I wanted to put out for scale. So Jen's about yay high to me. Right, so I'm about 5'11", so I'm guessing she's about 5'8", 5'9". Yeah. That door is about 15 feet high. It's a humongous, humongous door. So the room is just ginormous. That's me hanging out at an infinity pool in the room.
We don't need to see that. We can move on from that.
And there we go, just taking a sunset. There she is relaxing, a little champagne action. We're going off for the day. That's me kind of hanging out down at the bottom. But I mean, that's her sleeping, which I thought, so I went out, and what I did is I wanted to do a whole bunch of HDR shots. I wanted to kind of bring what I do, and that's what I was doing at the workshop. Joe was doing advanced flash stuff, and my job was to kind of represent with HDR and post-processing. And I was working on some images, and I see Jen kind of sleeping inside of that king-size bed at night, and I'm like, this is such a cool way for me to be able to show that experience in HDR. And I was like, all right, well, let me try to make that frame. There's tons of different, I mean, the experience was just absolutely incredible. Let me just show you a couple more images.
You got some phenomenal images. You kept posting stuff on Google Plus while we were there, and my wife was just sitting there looking at him and going, Pete, come look at this. Come look at that.
Yeah, so this was Joe actually teaching at the workshop. So we actually brought everybody into my room for one day to do some shoots there. And there's Callie and Drew, right, Joe's assistants, just kind of hanging out, enjoying a little bit of champagne before the end of the night. And it was just an amazing, amazing, amazing experience. These are some of the last shots that we had there. That's me hanging out in a pool. That's what it looked like every night for 8 days. And these were the actual shots. So this is the pitons. This is the one that's at night. That's a place where we had breakfast. There's one of the drinks that we were having. This is a separate island. That's the panoramic of the area. Yes. That's a panoramic of the inside of the room.
Somebody just wrote, talk about conflict in photography. Wow.
We're
all having conflicting issues about RC right now.
You know what?
Yeah, it looks like one of the most incredible places to go. I'm so glad you got to do that. I'm jealous, but I'm so glad that you got the privilege to do that because you've really been knocking it out, doing a lot of stuff, and so I'm glad you got this experience.
Yeah, it was. I'm very, very grateful for it. I was very grateful for the opportunity, and Joe's actually thinking about doing it again, which I thought was really, really nice for him and for people who want to experience that. But it was kind of like all of those things wrapped up into one. And it's hard for me to kind of put into words how it was because it literally was like a transformative experience to be able to get to do all of that and then get to go and stay in Jade Mountain and, you know, spend time with my wife. It was just absolutely amazing. Now, if you want to see more information on this, what I would say is this. There's a couple of places that I think you should check out. Check out Joe McNally's blog. Right? So this is a place for you to kind of catch up on anything, especially when Joe's going to do it again. So this will be good. If you want to see a little bit more on Jade Mountain, make sure that you go to jademountain.com. This is a place where you can kind of get more information. But thank you.
Yeah.
Because I was like, just getting back on that, and I thought it was really, really neat. But that was it.
That's pretty cool.
So I'm just getting back in the game. But conflict. Let's talk about conflict. Before we do any of that stuff, Make sure that you guys follow on Google Plus. Right, go to gplusrc.com. You can leave comments there. That's a good place for you to do that, as well as on the chat. So we're watching the chat and we're looking at all of the stuff kind of coming in for conflict. And we wanted to kind of spend some time talking to you guys about how to deal with problems that you have in front of and behind the camera, right? You're going to run into a problem at one point or another, either because you don't agree on a specific service, you don't agree on the type of service that you should be giving somebody, the problems that you could have with photographing a person and not necessarily knowing the expectations of the person. And there's all these different types of conflict that you can run into as a photographer in front of and behind the lens. And we figured that it'd be a good time for us to kind of hear your stories, as well as kind of give you a little bit of advice on how we've dealt with some of this stuff, and hopefully that would be something that would
how we've done it both the right way and the wrong way.
Yes.
Because sometimes the best teacher is when you screw up and you get burned, and we've both been burned on several occasions that we can go, hey, don't do it this way, do it this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, before we do any of that stuff, I have to also point out, I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting myself up to speed here. Go to worldwidephotoWalk.com. If you haven't done this yet, over 30,000 people have signed up for this. Over 1,300 walks that are happening this Saturday.
This Saturday, yep.
So
is it too late to join?
No, not at all. I would tell people, go to this website, go to worldwidephotoWalk.com, find a city that's nearby and sign up for this worldwide event. I mean, guys, it's free. All it is just a day for you guys to kind of go out and just take pictures. There is another section that I want you to take a look at here. Let me go ahead and just go to scottkelby.com. If you go to scottkelby.com today, we posted a series of videos on how you can actually take advantage of Google Plus on the day of the photo walk. So I have 3 videos step by step. It does all of that stuff for you right here. So there's the submissions. Brad did a great article on just the different dates that you need to keep in mind, as well as how to be able to use Google Plus. This, for me, is like my little pet project. I think it'd be really, really cool if we got as many people as we could using the Google Plus app, the live event app, so that they can show pictures from all over the world. You see that on Twitter when people do that the day of the conference.
Right.
Here I am in Cairo, here I am in the Maldives, here I am in Egypt. But to be able to do all of this stuff in real time, I think it'd be really, really cool. So if you haven't done so already, make sure that you guys go to this website, scottkelby.com. There's videos for you to be able to log in, register, sign up for Google Plus, sign up for the event, and you'll be up to speed for this Saturday, October 13th, where over 30,000 people are going to be taking advantage of the photo walk. Make sure that you guys take a look at this. Make sure that you guys participate.
Now, one of the things to remember is that one of the goals of the photo walk is, yes, there's going to be a winner from each walk that's going to be able to win a prize, but that's just kind of secondary. The whole thing is networking, getting together, finding people in your area that love photography like you do. And so it's not see who can beat the other one out for the best picture. It's to get to know the people around you that love photography. And it's just such a great way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Brad, thank you so much. I just saw that. You posted the link to enchancene.com for the cheaper rooms in the workshop. There are 2 separate ones. Jade Mountain is like this super priced, super experienced kind of resort, but there is also Jade Mountain, which is absolutely gorgeous.
No,
and it's
switch that around. Jade Mountain's
at the top.
Yep.
Enchancene at the bottom. So that's the difference there.
I just wanted to mention really quickly to not just the live audience, but everyone who's going to be watching the replay, all the links the guys are mentioning in the show will be in the show description, which will be right underneath the replay box on kelbytv.com. So
thank you very much, because we're sitting there, we're like, oh, what about this website? Oh, what about this website?
Yeah, no, I'm writing them down as fast as you guys mention them.
Perfect. Well, let's do this. Let's just take a quick reset break. When we come back, we'll start talking about a couple of different conflicts. I got a story, you got a story. Hopefully all of you guys have stories. Make sure that you're sharing them in the chat. I see a couple of wedding things have already come in on the chat. So
I'm surprised that weddings breed conflict. No,
not at all, not at all. But anyway, stick around with us. We'll be right back here on The Grid.
Hey folks, Moose here. A little birdie told me you want to learn wildlife photography. We're going to talk about everything from the basics. How do you find critters? What brings them in? I'm going to cram in more biology in this program than you could probably imagine. Because when you take that biology and combine it with that technology, the camera stuff, you come back with great images. What works for background, what works for exposure. The incredible, most important secret, the perch. We're going to talk about camera settings, we're going to talk about flash settings, we're going to talk about camera placement, we're going to talk about short lenses, long lenses. I'm going to help you incorporate it to wherever you live, be it in the middle of an island, in the mountains, the desert. Yep, I'm going to invite you to come to my home, my office, spend some time, learn some of my friends and neighbors how to take the best portrait of them possible. This is an exclusive you're going to see only on Kelby Training, so come along into the great jungle of my backyard.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Grid. My name is RC, and I'm here with Mr. Pete Collins, and we're here to talk about
Conflict.
Fighting, problems that you have in front of and behind the camera. Why don't we start off with a story?
Okay.
We were talking a little bit, you know, this, now, I'll just say, full disclaimer, this was Pete's idea. He wanted to kind of spend some time talking to all of you about these kinds of skills, and I thought that was a great conversation to have. Where did we come with this?
Well, one of the things that kind of stirred this on is I did a class at Photoshop World called storyboarding, and it talks about preparing and planning for stuff, and then that allows you to communicate with your client, with whoever, about what's going to happen. And a lot of conflict comes from miscommunication. The expectations of the client versus what you're going to provide, different things like that. And out of that, I asked some different people, what was your worst case scenario of where you did a project and it turned out that you spent all this time and stuff on it, and then the client didn't like it, went a different direction or whatever. And one of the guys got up and he said, I spent several months and $5,000 of my own money working on this project for a company that they ended up walking away from. And I was like, wow, could any of us really handle that if that came up? And how would you deal with that? How would you not only deal with it with them, but more importantly, how would you protect yourself against that in the future? And this guy said, you know, they had this great verbal agreement. It seemed like everything was going along great. But when it came down to making that final decision and signing off on everything, they decided that they would run in a different direction. And this kind of played into what I was talking about, storyboarding or preparing things ahead of time, whether you can draw or not. You create a plan that you have the client then agree to, and depending on your relationship with them, what level of agreement. Some people, if they're friends or whatever, it can just be an email back and forth, yes, I agree to this. But a lot of times, if you're dealing with large projects like he was, you need to make sure you get the agreement signed. And that's going to eliminate a lot of conflict. For the most part, photographers try to be nice guys, try to help people out. And a lot of times, if it's your friends or whatever, you want to do them a good service, so you end up agreeing to stuff that then can come back and bite you.
Well, see, and I think that's a very good point in that respect. And I think that if there's a takeaway when you're dealing with kind of working on a project and managing a project, sign off is probably the most important thing. When I work on website designs, or when we talk about anything that has to do with any kind of storyboarding, what we do is a lot of the times you have a document. I usually say, well, let's say that you want to bring a website to me, and you say, I want you to work on a website. We'll argue on what the goals of the website are supposed to be, right? So we'll say, hey, I want this website to do this. I want this website to do this. I want this website to have this functionality. I want this website to have this. And we just kind of specify all of these things in a document. It's a very free form, very, very loose list. But at the end of that, right, friend or otherwise, at the end of that, I usually tell somebody, all right, well, listen, I'm going to print this out. I'm going to send you a copy of it, and I want you to sign off on that, because this is a set of objectives, right? It defines the scope of what it is that you're working on your website. And when they sign off on that, they agree these are the most important things you need to work on the website. At that point, what will happen is it almost, and speaking of website design, because that's where I've seen a lot of different changes that have happened with this, but what will happen from there is usually any kind of client will start going, oh, and I also wanted to do this. Oh, and I also wanted to do this. And in project management terms, that's usually called scope creep. And what they call that is just basically just a small addition, and a small addition, and a small addition of all these other things that all of a sudden take over the project. So in the middle of all of this stuff, the best thing for you to be able to have in front of you is a piece of paper that turns around and says, you said that these were the things that we needed to agree on in order for us to move forward. You signed off on this. If you want to do something past this, we can either do it at phase 2, or this is called a change document. And this is an email that's going to say, I want to add this or pull some stuff away from this list, and how much that's going to cost. And I think that having yourself, when you were talking about the storyboarding concept, it was just like, that's brilliant. Because now you can actually have a set of storyboards, and you actually just make them sign off on that?
Yeah. Well, and the same thing with the contract. It's a lot of times you don't want to walk in and, depending on what you're doing, what the project is, come in with a big old stack of contracts or whatever. But maybe you're going to do a photo shoot for a family, whatever, and you've sat down and had that initial meeting with them. You come back and you sketch out what it's going to look like, or you've got some ideas of how the photo shoot's going to go. Well, as soon as you get on the set, whether it's a creative director or the client, you have them look at it, and if they approve, you just have them initial it or sign it. And that way it doesn't feel quite as clunky as a contract, but it at least says, yes, I agree to this. And to be honest, we don't like to think that we're to the point where we need contracts, but if you're making money shooting photography, you do need a contract. And the storyboarding is kind of a stopgap for that, but really if I'm getting into where I'm making my living off of shooting, I'm gonna have contracts because it eliminates the confusion, and it's that scope creep that'll really get you. If they go, now can you change this, now can you change that? If you don't have something that says, this is how much this initial thing is, and if you want more, it's gonna be this, then they're gonna keep adding on and adding on. And I think for us, one of the hardest things is we don't wanna say no a lot of times. We wanna keep them happy, but we end up doing this project that keeps growing and growing and growing, and we start to lose heart in that, and we start to get kind of mad at our client because they're killing us, but we don't have the right, we feel like, to say, no, that's too much. Mm-hmm. And so some ways that we can really eliminate conflict is to be very clear up front.
Right. And the most clear of all of these kinds of things is probably the establishment of a contract.
Written contract.
And that's one of those things. And I hate to reference it because I don't really know how we're going to write it. But there was a great YouTube video that was out there called F You Pay Me. And it really was an F. It was actually the 4-letter word, F You Pay Me. And it was a guy who was talking about freelancers on the entire concept of how important a contract is. So I'll let you guys look for it. We'll try to put a good link to it, but just to let you know ahead of time.
I'll make a bit.ly link.
Yeah. It's like whatever
Nancy's got
it
that
is.
bit.ly link she's going to hook you up with.
I was just like, whatever that's called, Nancy's like this. I got this.
I'm all over this.
I got
also
this.
Clients from Hell, too. That's a good one.
Yeah, Clients from Hell is a great website for you to take a look at. But that's one of those things where it's important for you to be able to have a contract. And one of the things that I remember that they said that was great on, thanks, Brad. Posted
Brad's
it.
already got it up right there.
Thumbnail in the chat.
This might not be necessarily
Mike Montero.
for work.
But it's a great video that talks about this. But it talks about how much money the person's actually saved by having a contract. But I think that if you needed to go into this in steps, the first thing that you can do in steps is for you to have a very, very clearly defined set of things that you both agree on that you're going to do. The second step in this entire process is for you to make sure that at every step of this process, you both have sign off. Right? And this is basic project management stuff. You've defined the scope of the project, you sign off, you send an email. You've set up a mock-up of something, you both sign up. And at every step of the way, everybody's informed as to what's responsible and what's not responsible, what the responsibilities are. Puma, just jumped in and said, sometimes I have a hard time asking for payment. If price wasn't discussed before the session was started, is it kosher to hold delivery until my standard payment posted on my site is met? All right, so that deals with payment. No, it isn't. Because fact of the matter is, Puma, you probably should have talked about prices on the very, very beginning of things. The best way for you to kind of get it out of the way and just to not have to worry about any of that stuff is to put pricing right up at the forefront of whatever it is that you're going to do. If you have a price on something, you need to be able to be very, very confident about the price. And I think that what happens is, when you're trying to price anything, people usually get very, very shy about it. And it's almost kind of like, show me mine and I'll, show me yours and I'll show you mine kind of thing. So nobody really talks about it. But hopefully you've gotten to a position where you can turn around and go, you know that this photo shoot is going to cost you $900. You need to be very, very clear immediately, right off the bat. How much is a photo shoot? $900. And see this? You can't blink. You can't. I don't know, maybe it's kind of sort of, it's just the moment that you do that, price is a very, very psychological thing. And the moment that there's a little bit of hesitancy, people will be like, are you sure? So in something like that, I usually tell people, well, how much is it? $900. Done.
Well, and I think that's key. It goes back to the heart of the matter of who we are. We tend to want to shy away from that. We're artists. We're photographers. We love to do this stuff. Money seems dirty, kind of like we're going to gouge them. Or we want to stay away from that. But more conflict comes about because we're not willing to state that. And it comes down to we don't really feel we're worth it. It comes down to a lot of times the conflict not necessarily is from the client, it's from us not feeling like we can be bold enough to say how much it's actually going to be, not saying this is what I charge and I'm not ashamed of it. Most of the time, as soon as we start to say, if we were going to say $2,000, before that $2 can get out of our mouth, it's dropped to $1,000 simply because of insecurity. Whereas if we've already set this up ahead of time, it'll even help us be bold during that conversation because we've thought it out before the pressure of I'm sitting across from my friend and they want to know how much it's going to be.
I remember somebody gave me the best piece of advice that I thought, and I still use it to this day, and I tell everybody, whenever you ask for a price of something, put some bass in your voice. There's like, put some bass in your voice and just say it. It's like, how much does it cost? $1,500. How much does it cost? $2,000. How much does it cost? $500. Whatever it is. But be very, very specific on that. Just because you were very specific on it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not the last word. And I think that that's one of those things that you can use from a negotiating tactic. There's a bunch of different information. There's some stuff that we wanted to talk about, but there's so many more comments. So I kind of wanted to go back. I think I'm going to do the comments more than I am going to do the stuff that's on the teleprompter. But let's see, Nat Member UK, my wife had a request from a friend about getting married who said, and I quote, "Can your husband shoot our wedding because he has a nice camera and he'll be really cheap?" Flatly refused, as some of my best friends shoots wedding for a living. Flatly refused this, as some of my best friends shoot weddings for a living.
Some of his best friends are wedding photographers.
Okay, so basically he said, somebody wanted to get him because he was cheap, and he decided against it. And Nat Member UK, thank you so much for that, because I think that there's a lot of people that are hustling on this, and you just did a great favor for them. I don't know if there's a lot of people out there that would do that. He also goes on to say, I always get 50% up front so that we're both committed to the project. Final payments are agreed in the contract agreement. So let me jump back on something like that, because the 50% up front is one of those things where I think is something that's very important with you. If you guys are thinking about any kind of contract or sample contract or any of that kind of stuff, one of the things that I think that you should make sure that you have in a contract is a retainer, like a deposit, a non-refundable deposit, which is, I think, the most important thing, and a kill fee. And you'll hear this every now and again about the concept of a kill fee. Basically, the way it works is this. If I were doing some work and I got, a quarter of a way through the work, I would not want somebody to take that volume of work and then move it and go to somewhere else and get it done cheaper, get it done differently, get it done with some of my ideas. So right off the bat, when somebody wants to hire me for a service, I'll turn around and go, in order for us to start this conversation, I need to get 20%, 30%, 40%, 50% of whatever it is that we're going to charge each other. I'll take that money And that money's not refundable. You know, I'll say, I'm not going to give you this money back. This is what we argue. This is what I used to start this entire process. We'll start talking, we'll start defining this. That money gets subtracted out of the total bill. But at any point in time, at least I have something for starting to work, because guess what? As photographers, we do this all the time. We don't factor into a cost driving around in your car going, how am I going to do this shoot? Where am I going to go? You don't factor in laying in your bed in the middle of the night going, man, I got to think about this, I got to think about that. Time is the biggest factor that people do not take into account when booking a job, when shooting a job. All of that time that you spend thinking and fiddling are things that it's a job that you didn't do, it's a daughter you didn't see, it's something that you didn't get to do. So all of that stuff aggregately costs money. And the best way for you to protect yourself with that is to have a deposit. After that, you need to have what's called a kill fee, which basically means you can't decide that you're done with this project and leave me hanging. I was relying on the amount of money that we were going to do here as a business. So if you decide to leave, this amount of money is due. So, and all of this stuff can be generally written in a contract. So when you hear things about non-deposits, or when you hear things about deposits and kill fees, that's what these things prevent you. These are 2 months, 3 months of your life that you probably could have devoted to something else if the client hadn't just up and walked away, or if the shoot hadn't just up and walked away from it. So having that all set in writing makes it a lot easier for you to kind of get some money in the process.
Well, and I think it goes back to the whole idea of valuing yourself and your life. So often we will sacrifice time with our family, time with our kids and our wife, because we're doing that one little project or that add-on for somebody, and we're not realizing that that's taking away from our lifestyle to do it for them. So it needs to be worth it to take that time away. I'm taking an hour from my family, so how much is that hour away from my family worth? Oftentimes we're thinking just, okay, I can do this in 15 minutes and I'm just going to knock it out. But in essence, it keeps stealing away from your life if you're not prepared to make it important and valuable, however much time it is. Mm-hmm. And so the insecurity about how much your work is worth needs to be set aside. It needs to be decided on so you can be very clear, and that's going to cut back a lot of conflict that you're going to have with other people. If you can say, RC's such a great example of this. When he talks to somebody and somebody says, well, how much is this? Boom, he's already got the idea of how much that's going to cost, and he says it right there. Now then he will deal with them, but he's got a base and he's got an understanding of how much it's worth, and he goes at it. And you get, most of the time, it surprises you when you come with a good, solid answer with no flinching. They'll go, okay, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm. And there will be times when you turn around and you have that conversation with somebody, well, they'll go, how much was that? Perfect conversation. I'll have a time where I was trying to sell a print that I wanted to do, and they were like, oh, do you have prints for sale? Yeah, well, I'm looking for this one specific print. How much was it? And I'm like, that print's $1,000. And then
everybody goes, holy moly, what?
And the person on the other end of the line turned around and just a long pause and said, that's it? And I was like,
yeah, I've never experienced that, but I'd love to experience that.
But see, and that's the thing. It's like you'll never really know unless you draw a line somewhere for most of that kind of stuff. And it's something where you're going to have to draw that line wherever you want to draw it. But you're going to invariably put yourself in a point where you're going to say something and you're going to find out that you're undercharging or you're overcharging. But you have to draw that line. You have to do something in the very, very beginning. Kino Grove. I paid for a photo shoot in August, and the results I got were not the same quality as posted on the photographer's blog/website. As a client/photographer, what is the best way to deal with this? That is a very, very hard scenario. You could bring it up to a lawyer, but I've seen this go in a lot of different ways, right? Because think of it, wait, can we back up against it? Brad wrote Judge Joe Brown.
Nice.
So you paid for the photo shoot.
So he's the client instead of the photographer.
Okay. That's, you'd have to see those. I mean, you could take it to a lawyer, but I've seen lawyers argue, well, look at them and look at you. I've seen that. I'm not trying to say anything about what you look like, but a lot of the times I've seen people turn around and go, well, obviously these are models, these are this, these are that, and look at your situation. Look, this was a sunny day. You can't argue with cloudy and rain and this and the other. So there are some, you know.
You would have to find legitimate examples of negligence or false advertising if on their website it was one thing and then they're giving you a product that's wholly different. But if it's a bad day versus a good day, you know, there's a lot of wiggle room in there. So it really is hard. And that's where you might want to, when you're hiring a photographer on the side of the client, is make sure of what the expectations are and what if there's a bad shoot. What if weather or something comes into play? Is there recompense for that on your side as well?
Mm-hmm. Do we have anything in the contract that says, listen, if I'm not, you know, if it's just a regular photo shoot, do you get redos? Is there something built into that? Is there something built into you being able to redo something if you don't necessarily want to see it? So that's one thing. You can kind of go that way. You can try to approach it that way. I wouldn't go the lawyer route just yet, but if it's just a regular photo shoot, I'd go back to that photographer and go, listen, this is not the same as this. What's wrong and how can we make this right? I'd start there if it was a regular photo shoot. If it was a wedding, you may have just become a statistic, but I'm not sure yet. I would probably defer to a lawyer on something like that.
Well, and one of the things that in this society nowadays, we kind of go, oh, let's get them, or they've given you a bad service or whatever. One of the best ways we can resolve conflict is to not instigate conflict. Remember, that person is a person. Mm-hmm. Remember, that person, the photographer, is probably trying to do his best, and it may have been a bad day or something may have happened. So start a discourse with them about making it right. Most of the time, the people that we deal with, that we know, if they've made a mistake or done something wrong, they'll want to fix it because they truly care about what's going on. You're going to find some bad apples in there, but if we go in immediately, hey, these pictures are crappy and I want something fixed, that may put up a defense mechanism on the photographer. Mm-hmm. You can avoid conflict by going in and saying, hey, listen, thank you so much for what you've done. I'd like to talk about these, and let's see if there's a place that we can come to as two human beings that want to get the best out of this situation. I think that's a huge way. Attitude coming into the situation can diffuse a lot of conflict as well.
Okay, so now we've talked about conflict on the business side of it, right? Just expectations, setting expectations. There is also conflict just let me knock this one out really, really quickly. Image use conflict, right? You have your images. Your images are your property, and these are found in another location. And somebody has used these images. My position on this is changing quite a bit, and it's one of those things where it's like I was talking to a buddy of mine, John, over in Houston, John Posazides, and he and Callie Lewis have this show, and he was talking to me about this entire concept of using pictures for copyright and things like that. And my position on that is in flux and is changing. But the one thing that doesn't change with all of this stuff is if you find your images in a place where they're being used without your permission, I think that you have a responsibility to tell these people, hey, listen, you're using my images are copyrighted. I need you to take these things down, and you need to find a quick way for you to be able to say that short, sweet email. However, that does not necessarily that doesn't deal with the situation. The best way for you to deal with all of this stuff is to make sure that every couple of months you're out there submitting your images to the Copyright Office. That has to be something that you do immediately. Take a set of images, put them up into the Copyright Office, because you'll never really know where those images are going to go next. Right? You don't know where all of a sudden the image that you put up on your website gets picked up by something that gets picked up by something that gets picked up by the Huffington Post. If that were to happen, you'd like to be able to have U.S. law on your side to be able to do that. That's pretty much it. The best place for you to take a look at this is go to kelbytraining.com. Jat Resnicki and Ed Greenberg did a phenomenal class on why you should protect your images, how easy it is, and what kinds of things can save, how you can be saved by having such a thing. So they also have a website called the Copyright Zone. So that's a great place for you to take a look at all of this kind of stuff from start to finish. My only advice in that one situation is just make sure that you register. Make sure that you register all the time. That is absolutely important. That's conflict solved.
Well, and
Protect yourself with that.
And most people know that I'm kind of the goofy flying all over the place, and this class is actually a great class that I would recommend for anybody. It's entertaining, but it's going to save you a lot of headaches. Because if you're like me, you sit and fester about these things. You don't want to have conflict with somebody else. Understanding where things go and how to do it, that's such a great class. Check it out on Kelby TV. I avoided it for the longest time because I'm like, I don't want to deal with copyright. I don't want to mess with that. But it's one of the best classes you can check out.
Yep. Now, Andrew, protecting yourself with contracts in writing for stages of the project. At work, hours laid out costs for upfront engineering. If the customer didn't like it, fine. We were still paid for all the preliminary work. Learn the lesson from customers taking our work and putting the specs out for a quote. Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you for sharing that. Bungle Nick. As a freelancer, I had to learn pretty quickly that communication about what is expected and what will be the compensation for that is key. Get it in writing and get it in early, especially if you're going to be out of pocket on expenses. Absolutely. I agree with you as well, Bungle Nick. Jeff May. Unfortunately, he's lost a lot of work by hesitating about price. Not good. Riker VP. How would you deal with back out from the client at the last minute? Refund, etc. The best way for you to deal with that, Riker, is to get a deposit, right? Getting a deposit. What happens with most of this stuff, and I think like let's bring it back into the photography side of things. Photographers love using Model Mayhem.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
We love Model Mayhem for some strange reason. We like getting out there and we like getting cheap models. And you'll look for photographies and models for TF, right? Time for print, time for CD, time for whatever. But what happens is this. No one, I don't think anybody really appreciates anything unless they have skin in the game. If you have no skin in the game, then you can back away and you can do whatever it is you want very, very easily. So when you ask for somebody for a deposit, what you're telling them is, I'm going to commit my most precious resource to making sure that we both do what we're supposed to do. My most precious resource being my money. So by saying, hey, listen, it's $100 deposit that's going to guarantee your seat, you will be surprised as how many people will actually show up because they won't necessarily go, you know what? I'm too lazy. I don't necessarily want to do this. I don't want to work with this. So by putting a deposit in place, you'll be surprised how much you can actually solidify a lot of those bailouts.
Well, yeah, Glenn Dewis says not taking the deposit, I actually found harms your business, not just financially, but also professionally, in not being viewed that way. It raises your game and it gives you a more professional appearance if you have these things in place. Instead of Johnny taking pictures out of the back of his car, he's got contracts, websites. He's got things set up that he can make these statements. You're going to do a shoot, I'm going to need a deposit. Mm-hmm. You've automatically raised your game to a new level. And the thing is that we've talked about is whatever level you're set at, you're going to get more people in that arena. If you become known as the guy that just does it on the cheap and you can throw other stuff on there, that person who drove you crazy doing those cheap shoots is going to tell all their cheap friends who are going to come and bug you, and you're going to be known for that.
Right.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is say no. And it's being known for what you'll say no to that will elevate you up to what you want to do.
Right, and it's one of those things you need to separate, to some degree, you need to separate what it is that you're doing as a professional, not so much as a professional, because it's a lot of the times I think people get kind of hung up on the entire professional thing, but you need to at least show that you're serious. And the best way for you to show you're serious is to be able to have a set of expectations and to exchange some of that money. In the process of that, I think it solidifies a lot of that stuff. Andrew says, the biggest need for a contract is to prevent misunderstandings on both sides. Problems we encounter were generally not one side trying to screw the other. A client's perception of what you need to do skewed by his own ideals and vice versa. You don't know his world as well as he. Contracts help stabilize and provide a translation benefit between us. Absolutely.
That's great.
And I like that one because it was talking about the expectation of what was supposed to happen. There was another type of conflict that we were talking about. You know, we haven't even got to the shooting concept of it. But while we're on this entire wedding thing, you'll hear this every now and again. Come shoot my wedding for free. Come shoot my wedding for free. Or I want you to do this service for me for free. you'll get to a point where people will ask you to do something for free. And what happens is we'll go out there and we'll do these things for free, and we'll completely get taken advantage of. Right? The wedding that you're supposed to shoot, they have these unrealistic expectations of how many images you're supposed to edit, how much work you're supposed to do, how much footage are you supposed to provide, how you're supposed to package this information. So you have all of these different things, and it's like, well, you're supposed to do this thing for free, and now you'll find out that at the end of it, you're out a friend, and you're out a ton of time in the middle of a wedding. Well, how do you deal with that?
And I like what you do. You've taught me this, and I've learned it from you, is a great thing that you do is, even if, a lot of times it happens as a friend, somebody that you're close to, that it's kind of like a wink, wink, nod, nod, yes, I'll do your stuff, but what do you do when they approach you with something like that?
I give them a bill.
I've never even thought about that.
The number one way that I usually prevent, because what happens is this, when there's no money that's exchanged, there's no perception of how important something is. So if Pete were to ask me to do a shoot for free, I'm going to look at Pete and I'm going to go, yeah, you know what? I'm more than happy to do it for free. Pete only sees that his buddy came in for free, his buddy took his camera out, his buddy pulled it up to his face, his buddy took the picture, and his buddy went home. Pete doesn't see the business side of it. So when Pete asks me, I want to be able to do something, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, okay, sure, not a problem. I'd be happy to do it for free. I'm going to give you this bill. It's just for my record keeping purposes. It helps me kind of keep organized here. But in this bill, you will also notice that you'll notice that the headshot right here, the fee is $1,200. Don't worry about it, because look, right here I put pro bono discount for a free discount minus $1,200, and your cost is $0. But I need you to sign this. I'm going to take a copy, and I treat it exactly like a business. I treat it like any other transaction. He walks away with a sheet of paper that says his time is worth $1,200. I walk away with something that I can probably use if I wanted to use it on a profit and loss, or if I want to, at one point or another, go, chill out. This is a $1,200 shoot. So we both have this expectation by just having this exchange of a receipt. It makes you look like a professional, and it clearly specifies to the person that you're dealing with, this is how much this time is worth at this specific moment.
Well, and somebody just wrote, and it just went by, when somebody gives you something for free, don't you give up your right to complain? We wish that was the case. Sometimes the biggest complaints come from people that you're doing favors for, because they just don't appreciate what your time and your worth is worth. It's like he said, the contract helps bridge the gap. This person is a computer programmer. He goes in, he hits a couple buttons over here. That's what we think. He just sits there and hits a few buttons. And we're like, how hard can that be? And he thinks about us. We just go pick up the camera, click the button a couple times. How hard can that be? We don't know what each other is doing. We don't value what they know and what they bring to the table. And so the contract helps bridge that gap. That's why I love what he said about how good a contract is of helping communicate. Because, to be honest, most of the time you're not going to be dealing with somebody who's out to intentionally screw you over. Or somebody that a client is not going to hire you hoping that they can get as much out of you as possible. It comes down to a misunderstanding.
And I think that that's one of those things. You'll see that there is a very, very big correlative between the amount of money that people pay and the amount of complaints that people have. It would shock you guys. It would absolutely shock you if you want to see less complaints, if you bring your price up. There is some sort of psychology that's in place where if you nickel and dime somebody, if you charge a nickel and dime price, people will nickel and dime you. If you charge this super price, it's almost as if people feel like they get to do something with you, if that makes any sense. It's like if fashion photographer X charges me $5,000, well, I'm going to fashion photography X. It's almost kind of like you get to a point where if you see a mistake, you'll almost blame yourself. If you see something different, obviously I don't understand it because this is like the super high money thing. So there is like these weird paradoxes that happen when it comes to money. Now, I'm not saying charge people $5,000 to be able to do something, but what I am saying is charge something. Charge something so that people understand that there is a certain amount of worth in what you're doing, and you'd be surprised as to how outlaying all of this stuff will make it a lot easier for you to be able to navigate those relationships right before you go into that shoot. Now,
Hey, let's take a break for a minute. Let everybody kind of catch their breath. We'll catch our breath. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this.
Right, because you're going to be in the shoot. Let's talk about concepts inside the shoot.
At Adorama, our trained staff share your love of photography and can help you find what you're looking for. Our inventory is stocked with all types of cameras and accessories you need. Adorama has it all. Adorama, more than just a camera store. Visit us at 42 West 18th or at Adorama.com.
Bad weather strikes and threatens your next outdoor shoot, you need the experience. The experience of a photographer that can handle any situation.
Get your hair out of your eyes! Come on!
The experience of Joe McNally.
Bad weather doesn't mean you can turn in a bad shoot. It's really bad weather out here, Harry! I'm not gonna leave this dock without a picture.
Trust Joe to teach you the tips you'll need to capture stunning photos even when the weather turns ugly.
Anybody there see the sun? I don't.
Don't let bad weather ruin your next...
I'm happy again. What am I supposed to out here? Sing a chorus of I Feel Pretty?
Don't let bad weather ruin your next photo shoot.
Telling people what is perfectly obvious, that the weather sucks!
Rely on Joe McNally to help you weather the storm.
The miracle of photography visits us again. We are...
Learn how to take great photos in bad weather. Watch Joe McNally.
Whoa, was that the same cow?
Sorry, we're just giggling about the Joe McNally thing.
It's one of those things where it's like, how do you deal? When we're talking about the entire concept of conflict, right? All we've talked about is how to deal with the establishment of contracts and all of the kind of, you know, the boring paperwork that you want to deal with. And then it talks about, well, what happens when you get in front of the camera? If you want to deal with a person who is the absolute best at dealing with conflict, in a photo shoot, look no further than McNally. He is one of those guys who is absolutely phenomenal at going, all right, well, this was supposed to be this, and now it's not. So what are we going to do? I was actually on set when they were doing this. They were doing one of these episodes. They were doing one section where they were doing I'm not going to spoil it, but it's a really cool car shoot. And he literally gets to the location and he's like this. Okay.
Well, he came down here for the week of shooting it, and it was like tropical storm came.
Yeah. And we were like, well, what do we do? And he pushed through, and I saw some of the pictures. And because we sat there, so confession, we sat there, and we were talking about the class, and they were like, oh my God, you know, what do we do? So I'm looking at it, and I'm like, Joe, what'd you do? And he's like, well, this is what I did. And he showed me these pictures, and I'm like, my jaw hits the floor, and I'm like, dude, these are awesome. And you know what? Fact of the matter is this. We're never going to always get the sunny day, the beautiful model, the great location, all of this kind of stuff. I'm like, Joe, you need to tell people about this class. You need to make this an experience where people go, guess what? Every now and again, it just doesn't work out.
Things fall apart.
And what do you do when things don't work out? No one talks about that. So I'm really excited about this class. I thought he knocked it out of the park. So I'm really, really happy about it. But that's pretty much. Look.
Brad's pulling up a chart that I think y'all just showed up there.
From F-Stoppers, about the likelihood of people complaining about the final product depending on how much the client paid. That's
Nice.
a great chart.
Nice.
But anyway, so that brings us a little bit more into now what happens when we're in front of the camera, right? What kind of conflicts do we deal with when we're doing most of this? Because here's the thing. So now we have a camera in front of us, and we have a client that's in front of us. Sometimes those expectations don't necessarily match, or sometimes you're not necessarily having the best pictures that you're dealing with. You don't get the best pictures out of the client that you're working with. And the best advice that I think, like, what will happen is sometimes people are cold Sometimes the shoot is cold. Sometimes the scenarios are cold, and that forces kind of this impasse between you and your subject. How do you deal with those types of conflicts? How do you deal with that kind of disagreement in a body of work? And one of the things that I think that's the most important with all of this is the bedside manner of the photographer. If I could leave you with a tip, if I could leave you with a piece of advice, is to go back and take a look at the photographers like McNally, like Scott Kelby, like Dave Black, and take a look at not what they're shooting, but how they interact with those models. Go back to those Kelby training classes and forget about the model. Look at the photographer. The bedside manner of the photographer is the most important thing that needs to be learned. When I look at Maisel, when I look at all these people, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at how they're talking to people, how they're working with people. Joe kind of has this very, very matter-of-fact, very, very subdued kind of, all right, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and instills a set of confidence within that. And some people have very, very off-the-wall kind of, hey, we're happy, we're fun, we're happy, we're fun. Matter of fact, you guys have probably seen shots with Scott, shoots with Scott, where Scott's kind of just talking and he's out there and he's having fun and he's making people laugh. And that's his kind of bedside manner. Developing that person for who you are will get infinite results when you're working with a specific shoot. So that, I think, is a great conflict resolver.
Well, can I jump in?
Sure, absolutely.
And what makes it so is humility. Mm-hmm. You think about when you watch Joe in action, he really does care about the person he's shooting. He really does want to make sure that they're doing all right. And we've got to realize that as photographers, we're kind of in a position of power a lot of times. We've got people that may not have had their picture taken often, and they're uptight, or there's a lot going on, it's a wedding, and they are stressed out. And the best thing you can do is become an ambassador of grace and humility in the midst of that, and come in and value them. And it's going to take that pressure situation and just drop it down. It's going to knock out a lot of conflict if you come in and put your pride to the side and go, how can I serve you with my camera?
And I think that that's a great way for you to. That's a great way to be able to talk about this. That at the end of the day, you need to take a step back from who you are and from who you are as a photographer, from the work that you're doing. Here's a perfect example. I'm glad you mentioned the entire thing. That because that gets us back into that location shooting, right? You guys go out there. You pack your bag, you go to DC, and the first sheet of paper that you grab is the photographer's Bill of Rights.
Yep.
Right, so you put the photographer's Bill of Rights, and you have every intention of when you put your tripod down, if a cop shows up, these are my rights. My rights as a photographer. This is what I can do. How dare you tell me that I can't do that?
This is my taser.
Right. And a cop will turn around and go,
unless you're Matt Cook.
Okay. Yeah, unless you're Matt Cook.
Sorry, Matt.
But in the middle of all of that stuff, what happens is we tend to not be individuals that necessarily want to. Yeah, my rights. So we tend to be we tend to be people that don't want things to. We don't want people to infringe on our inalienable rights for something. And I think that what we don't understand is that sometimes we need to kind of just yield a little bit of what we have for the greater good. I tell people all the time, whenever I'm shooting with something, I tend to not grab my tripod and I don't splay the legs of the tripod completely out, because I feel like as a photographer, I put those legs of the tripod all the way out and I'm like, I am a photographer. Please excuse this entire area around me as I take pictures. And what happens with that is people look at you and they go, look at that guy. And you become that guy. You become to cops that guy. So in the middle of all that, rather than being that guy and trying to exercise your right, what I'll do is I'll take my tripod and I'll make my tripod, the legs of my tripod, really, really small so that it literally sits right in front of me. No more of a footprint than the footprint that I would take. If a cop's walking by and he sees me with my tripod in that specific move, it will shock you how many times people will go, oh, this guy understands that there's a certain amount of respect, there's a certain amount of environment, there's a certain amount of this, and he's yielding a little bit of that. You would be surprised as to how many times a cop will turn around and go, it's cool. It's totally cool. Or if you turn around and ask, hey man, listen, I just wanted to know, can I do this? I know that you guys are really, really busy here. Just turning around and yielding the fact that they have a job, they have to do this. Do you have to? No. But just giving a little bit of that up and giving it to somebody, you'll be surprised as to how many times somebody will go, hey, dude, that's totally cool. Go ahead and do it.
We experienced that in D.C. because when we had Photoshop World D.C. last year, everybody was going, man, you can't take a tripod anywhere. You can't do any of this. And what we found is the Lincoln Memorial. We walked up and we had our tripods, and we walked immediately up to the lady that was watching everything, and we said, hey, we know that you're probably going to be a little bit concerned about us with this. Is it all right if we do this? And what, half an hour later, we had every place in there surrounded with tripods, and she was watching and chatting with us and having a good time because she knew we respected her right to tell us yes or no, and we came to her first and yielded our rights to her, and it actually opened up more opportunities for us.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, people would be surprised as to how much you'd actually get if you just go, hey man, this is something, look, you guys are cool. It doesn't have to be that antagonistic of a relationship. They have a job, we have a job. And I think that if you walk into this and you go, hey, listen, can we? You'd be surprised as to how many times you'll get an answer. John G just wrote in the chat, as a cop, I have to say you guys are 100% correct. You don't want to be the guy that turns around and goes, my rights, because a cop will turn around and go, oh yeah, but you know what? I think there's some sort of ordinance about waiving something in a personal space of a cop. I don't know, but we're going to figure it out downtown because I got nothing to do and you got to shoot. So a cop can just turn around and do that to you. So there's one of those things where I tell people you have to give up a little bit of yourself. You'd be surprised as to how much you're going to get.
Well, and the bottom line is that most conflict comes from lack of communication and lack of empathy for the other person, and realizing that that is a person too that has the same fears, frustrations, dealing with some of the same issues. And if we can just take a minute and let our insecurities go to the side, we might be able to reach into that area of conflict and build something good out of it. And I know that's all sounding all kumbaya and whatever, but we forget we are so, were you doing the kumbaya for me over there, Nancy? We're so used to internet and everything else, we just throw out these piffy things and my rights and I do this and that and the other. We forget there are people on the other end of whatever conflict we're dealing with, and they probably have the same desires that we do. And if we can reach them with humility and humanity, we can relieve a lot of this.
Yep. Absolutely.
I just want to say really quickly, because I think you just summed it up perfectly right there. I mean, in life, just in life, I think a lot of problems would be avoided if people just took a second, step outside of their ego, and walk a mile in someone else's shoes. I mean, across the board, in business, life, etc. Anyway, I just had to say, good on you.
We get 2 thumbs up and an arm swing from Nancy.
And some robot rings.
Yeah. So we're not going to be able to cover everything about conflict, but we want to give you some things to think about. And one of the best things you can do as a photographer is to make sure that you're clearly communicating with your clients, with your friends, because that's going to take away a lot of pressure and a lot of frustration. You don't want to be sitting up at night talking to your wife about, yeah, I got to do this project tomorrow that I said I'd do with my friend. Oh, really? Your wife's going to come back. How much are you getting paid for that? Well, I told him I'd help him out. Oh, so you're going to skip your kid's soccer game to come do this. You've got to balance all that out. Not only is there conflict with your client, there's conflict with your family if you're not taking care of the business side of things. Unfortunately, a lot of it comes back to business because
that's it. It's a business. At the end of the day, if you're picking it up for more than you should, you need to start doing most of this stuff now. So the 3 things that we want to leave you with, all that stuff: clarity. Clarity in contracts is the best way for you to do it. Slight case, a couple of emails, a little bit better, There'll be some sign off on some specific things. Best, getting the contract.
Yep.
Once you're at the shoot, the best thing for you to do is to make sure that you study the bedside manner of a photographer. How you interact with that person will resolve a lot of those details. And there is a lot of smoke and mirrors when it comes to that kind of stuff. It's not a game, it's just a technique. And you need to make sure that you understand that how you relate to people is infinitely as important as what you can do with your fingers on the camera. Then the last part of all of that stuff is humanity, dealing with the humanity of things, dealing with giving up a little bit of yourself in order for somebody to give and meet you halfway with most of that stuff. If you keep these three things in mind, you'll be surprised as to how much of those conflicts you can actually resolve. Now, there's a couple of other things that I want to kind of keep in mind here. We have a
By the way,
contest.
that was a beautiful wrap-up. That was well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I just was impressed.
Contest time. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Secrets of a Great Portrait Photography, Brian Smith. I love his shots in here. It's a great, great book. So if you want to take a look at some really, really nice pictures, all right, Mr. Branson, hanging out. Phenomenal book. One of you guys is going to get it, right? All you have to do, what do they have to do, Nancy?
Nancy, what do they have to do?
Guess what? We're changing it up again. So what we're going to do, I am posting a link right now. And what I want you to do is go to kelbytv.com/contest. And there is a form right there. And you fill out the grid. You have to put in which show you're watching. Put in your information in the comments if you want to put in your shipping address. That would be great, because then we don't have to go and do the double contact and everything. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to open this one up to all the viewers that are going to watch the replay, and we are going to pick a winner on Monday. And we'll send it out that way. So go to kelbytv.com/contest, fill out the form, and let us know what you think of the show. Let us know what you think of the topic, and because we're going to look at every single one, and we'd like your feedback.
Perfect.
And that's it.
I have one question, Nancy. What happened to the 8th ring?
Oh, he died.
Oh.
Orange robot ring died today.
Oh, okay.
I've been doing a series of pictures on Instagram, so if you just look for the robot ring hashtag, you'll see it.
Okay.
Now, last thing I want to leave you guys with, if you are an iOS user, make sure that you take a look at Light It magazine, right? If you're using an iPad, Light It magazine right here. This is something that I'm going to be spending a lot of time with. I just took over editorship of Light It magazine, so I'm going to be doing a lot of work with playing around with this. I want to know your feedback. I want to know what kinds of things you want to see inside of Light It magazine. I'm excited to play with it, right? If you haven't seen it, this is the magazine for photography. You're going to absolutely love what you see inside of here. There's going to be some great stuff. Make sure that you take a look at this. Go to the App Store and take a look at Light It magazine. Guys, we're about out of time. Thank you so much for coming by. Thank you so much. Nancy, there was quite a bit of conversation that was in there. So
this was a great show, guys. Great topic. The audience, there's just been so many fantastic comments. So again, all the links mentioned will be in the show description tomorrow. I am also putting a link to the live blog archive. So I mean, because someone already asked if they can, how they can find this again. You'll find a link tomorrow's show, so you can go back through and read it through, because this is a great show. Good job,
I just have one request. Can you filter out all the things about HDR cats and stuff that you know who you are in there? I see those going by.
Yeah, people thought that I was going to mention the entire HDR thing, and I'm like, guys, I wasn't here that week. Sorry, wasn't here. Nothing to do with it. But anyway, Pete, thank you so much for stopping by, man.
Thank you for having me.
It's always very, very good to have a conversation with you on all of this stuff. So, and all of you guys, thank you so much for watching. We will see you guys next week on The Grid. Take care.
This week's episode of The Grid is sponsored by MPix. Shoot today, upload tonight, we ship tomorrow. Manfrotto, imagine more. On One Software, software that gets you back to shooting. Adorama, more than a camera store. Tiffin, helping create the world's greatest images. Peach Pit Press, publishers of technology books, ebooks, and videos for creative people. Epson, exceed your vision. Expo Imaging, Rogue Flash Benders for speedlight enthusiasts. Nix Software, photography first. And B&H Photo, the professional source.